Billy Tutko, owner and operator of T3, Tutko Tactical Training. Um, I did 8 years as a Navy corpsman with the Marine Corps, and I've done all kinds of security work over the years, to include 6 years as an armed guard at the schools. And I worked bars and all kinds of other clubs since before I went into the military. While I was in the military, and since ran Manatee Gun and Archery Club. I own the firearms training company now, and I just teach firearms full time. And this is John Bueller and Bill Murphy to my right. John Bueller, you want to give your little...
Did 32 years of California law enforcement from 1978 to 2010. It was a great carnival ride, enjoyed it. A variety of different assignments, a lot of fun. Retired, moved to Florida. California wasn't very gun friendly. Here we are today.
Yep.
I'm Bill Murphy. I was lucky enough to have Billy Tucko be the firearms instructor for my children. He did a wonderful, wonderful job with them. In return, I'm one of Billy's grapple food coaches. Glad to be here, and just glad to be in John's presence as well.
Thanks, buddy. Right back at you.
Billy Murphy. Both of you are two people that I hold in high regards when it comes to talking about self-defense, about firearms. Both of you are mentors to me, for sure. So I love having you two together here on this with me, and hopefully we'll have a bunch more videos to do and whatnot. But thank you so much for being here, both of you guys.
Billy, before we formally begin, I just want to also give John a compliment. I'm a student of kinesiology, and John, I have to say, when I watch you move, do shoot and move, your body movement is very precise and crisp and on point. And
thank you.
what did you do to develop those habits? Did you have somebody watching you? I mean, somebody drilled that into you.
It really came from the late 80s down in Arizona at Gunsight. We went down there 3 years in a row, took 2 pistol classes, 1 cartridge class, and there were a lot of guys that came out of there during the time we were there. Nash Piazza, who runs Front Sight down in Nevada, he was in one of our classes. Fantastic instructor. Another great instructor, Scott Reitz from LAPD. He was a D platoon SWAT guy. He runs training down in Southern California. Another great instructor. He was in our carbine class. So there were a lot of people. Gabe Suarez has written some books, good firearms instructor. That we all came out of that same area group. They called us Orange Gun Sight guys because it was before Bill G bought the company from Cooper and changed things. So they were very big. You do a 5.5-day course, but you only shoot 600 rounds with pistol on the beginning class. But they were really big on making sure all your movements are very fluid, whether it's running a wheel gun, which we didn't take, but especially with like a 1911, so there's no wasted movement. They were big on keeping things simple, and so anyway, I appreciate the compliment on that. But yeah, if you can make things smooth, they have that saying that slow is smooth and smooth is fast, or I don't know what that is. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Fast is fast. And if it isn't fast, it isn't going to be fast. But if you can make your movement smooth, you can develop speed because you're not wasting movement. But thanks for the compliment on that.
So yes, so I'm going to address that because some people hate that thing and some people love it. And I like the slow is smooth, smooth is fast, because if you do things smoothly, you'll be able to get faster and faster.
Exactly.
If you do things very erratic, you're going to end up just doing them more erratic when you add speed to it, and you're not going to ever get that to be as smooth and as fast as you can be if you are doing it smoothly.
Right.
And efficiently. And that's something that I talk about in a lot of my classes is efficiency in use of motion. Whether it's efficiency in use of motion in the draw, or whether it's efficiency in use of motion on that trigger.
Right.
Do I need to take my finger off the trigger every time before I take a shot? No. I need to, make multiple shots, be very efficient with my use of motion on that trigger. Yes, Phil.
I would also like to just put forward that we're not always going to be, quick draw McGee, but I think your practice for me would help me possibly have less error, where I'd operator error, or if I, missed wildly because I was doing things wrong in my haste and my stress and adrenaline. So even if I did not become quick, I might be less prone to error.
Yes. Being efficient with your use of motion is going to prevent you from having error. And especially like when I talk about keeping my gun leveled off, I'm not fishing, I'm not bowling, right? My gun is leveled off. I can start squeezing off from there. My gun is leveled on my target. So as soon as I get that gun leveled onto that target, I can start squeezing that trigger and putting rounds on target. If you're fishing, I can't hit that target until I get that gun back down and level, and now I can pull the trigger.
Same thing with your bowling.
Same thing with your bowling. Yeah.
Also with safety. I mean, how many times have we been on an archery range or a gun range and somebody's pointing the wrong end of the projectile weapon at other people?
Yes. Yeah.
If they're moving around. As a matter of fact, that makes training new people with pistols compared to long guns even more nervous, in my view.
It does. And I feel like rifles are more inherently safe than pistols when it comes to firearms training. And that is something I usually point out when I'm doing pistol training, is that it is inherently more dangerous. It's easier to, one, shoot yourself, and easier to shoot somebody else when you're just manipulating the gun. And that's why it's important that we manipulate it in workspace instead of turning around and moving the gun around and stuff, because these guns are so short, you can very quickly turn them onto yourself or onto another person. So it's very important that before you teach pistol, it doesn't matter, revolver or semi-auto, that you address that, hey, we need to be very aware of where this gun is pointed. Our 4 safety rules.
Well, and sometimes it comes full circle on that when you're teaching somebody who has experience that they gained from watching John Wick or something like that.
dear.
I had a gal in class here a few months ago, a young gal, and of course I started her out on a suppressed 22. And I said, you'll probably enjoy this, because who doesn't enjoy
Everybody
suppressed
does.
22? Yeah. So she right-handed shooter, I'm on her left shoulder in the stall, and she fires the first round, and of course it was Hollywood quiet because it's a suppressed 22. But she did the most remarkable thing that I didn't expect. But she separated her hands, let the gun down range, and she turned directly to me 90 degrees, and she mouthed the words, "Oh my God," and then went right back and emptied the mag because it was just so much fun. But she had the presence of mind to make sure that she was independent of the gun, which is really difficult. You get these people in these classes and you tell them these things over and over and over for, half hour, 45 minutes in the classroom. You take them out on the range and it was like it was a big sieve. It went right through and it didn't retain. So you have to keep reminding them gently. And because as we know, we never shouted at anybody on the range when we were teaching because they're holding a loaded gun. Wouldn't be too wise to do something like that. So you gently remind them, don't call their mom, and let them, progress as they go. But like when you talk about smooth motions and things like that, on the semis, we've all heard about those times where people freeze under pressure.
Yes.
And they just don't do anything. And of course, that's the one saying, at least do something.
Yes.
Because if you freeze, and I was reading an article about that, it was called Hick's Law. And it's the confusion that's built into multiple options under stress, trying to sort through them and figure out which one to do. And so if you have your fist and you have your index finger and you touch your baby finger, you can do that night and day, in the dark, anytime you want. If you put a semi-automatic pistol in your fist and you put your magazine, you got a mag right there that's empty? Yeah, there we go. How convenient. We're doing a class here. You are touching that top round. You're doing the same thing you're doing here, but you have a pistol and a mag, and they're going to go in there so you can do it under, low light conditions and things like that. As you run your hand up the side of the gun, come to the top, you crush that slide, you pull back and let it go so you don't pinch crap out of yourself. And it doesn't make any difference if you're doing it slide lock empty, slide lock forward, you're loading the gun that way. So you're shooting, you get a malfunction, you tap the bottom of the mag, you come over the top, you clear it that way. Same thing if you get a stovepipe, you clear it that way. So you've got 4 different functions there: slide lock empty, load; slide lock forward, load; misfire, stovepipe, all done with the same motion, which keeps things very simple. You don't have any confusion unless you get maybe a double feed, and then you still do the tap rack, but then you lock it open, clear it, and then go back, tap rack to fire. So I'm a big proponent of simple things. Obviously, cops are not too complicated. Write those tickets, get those donuts, and get that overtime. I mean, that was kind of what we did. But with the guns, keep it simple, go through there, and you're good to go.
And Billy knows I'm Coach Sissy, meaning that everything you just described, with very few exceptions, can be done with airsofts or laser trainers. You could do with unloaded firearms, but I even like the laser trainers and the airsofts even more, because it eliminates the human error. And these are things we're not necessarily practicing to fire a live round. We're trying to get all of our kinesiology and our habits correct.
Yeah.
And so why do we ever want to take that additional risk, particularly with new students, until they're perfect?
Yeah. Well, that's why we emphasize the dry practice with the gun. Your time at the range, unless you do a lot of shooting because you like to do a lot of shooting, your time at the range, 50 or 100 rounds a few times a year, is to confirm your dry practice is transferring over to being able to hit the target with sequential connecting holes at a reasonable distance under time pressure.
Which, as a note, I used to train fighters a lot, and it takes a village kind of thing. So we'd send them to the best strength coaches, guys like Billy. We'd send them to the best kinesiology people in his sport. That would be John. We send him to the best takedown coach, the best boxing coach. And my approach to coaching is I'm willing to teach anybody firearm safety. I'm very, very passionate about that, and even teach them firearm safety with those things that are laser trainers and airsoft. But when they are ready for live ammunition, I refer them. I refer them to the people that specialize in that because it's a different environment. And I'm willing to assist them as an assistant range safety officer, maybe being the eye in the sky at their back, making sure nobody's pointing a firearm at them. But I think it's really important to refer. We have so many people that train their spouses or their children, and they train them incorrectly. And those habits are so hard to break.
Well, so I'm glad you brought that up because that's one of my biggest pet peeves that I see at the indoor ranges regularly is a guy who doesn't know what he's doing teaching their wife, their kid. And this is the most important thing I feel. They're teaching them on the wrong platform.
Oh yeah, start with this 44 Magnum, you'll love it. And
Yeah.
it's a 105-pound person.
Yeah, like,
Here's their 12 gauge.
and honestly, and whether you're teaching semi-autos or revolvers, and I even have a revolver in 22,
You should.
I start every student off on 22 pistol, revolver, rifle even, because it allows them to practice a lot and it doesn't make them have to mitigate a lot of recoil. They can focus on doing the basics, which is stance, grip, sights, trigger, and breathing. And they can really focus on doing those 5 things and applying those 5 things that I teach them before they shoot, as opposed to if you're just putting a 9mm or 357 or something in somebody's hand. The other thing that people don't do correctly is they teach those people and they don't prep them beforehand at all. Before I teach anything to anybody, even if they're prior military, prior law enforcement, whatever, I send them 7 safety videos, so that way we can get them in the proper mindset before they even come to the session with me. Then the first thing I go over with is safety and how to be safe with the firearms, and apply those rules and answer any questions about safety. So that way I can conduct their plan, their session with as much safety as possible, because I do not want to deal with another gunshot wound.
Well, I'm going to segue into some of our topics today. So I've had several people that were older or that had physical disabilities, and some of them had some shooting experience and some of them had none. But it's important. For instance, I've got some type of Parkinsonian's syndrome, so I have to know my limits.
Yeah.
And I'm much better to carry a shotgun, I think, even if I had a lighter load shell in it, in many cases, than a pistol. The pistol is my backup, and not just for all the reasons that you may normally think. You carry a long gun for greater ability to put a round at a further distance, or more ammunition perhaps, or a heavier round, but really because the limitations of me. I have to realize that every year that passes, I'm going to be a little bit smaller in my ability, and I need then to pick the best platform for me. And I'm very passionate about shotgun mini shells for older shooters.
Yes.
That's a
Oh
very
no, and
versatile
that's
round.
something that I have started pushing more with some of my older clients and stuff. Is or if you got a small wife, hey, put those mini shells in that shotgun. Don't put 2 3/4 or 3-inch Magnum shells in there.
And I like the multi-barrel shotguns because I think the modern platforms handle the mini shells very, very well. But to John's earlier point, which we may have not caught on camera, I am in love with the simplest platforms possible, so that if something goes bump in the night and I'm not at my best, I've got my best chance.
That's it.
It's very interesting you saying that. What are you carrying on your body today?
Well, I have a variety of things with me, But for 20 years, my carry was a Ruger S&P 101 or something like it, a little snub-nosed 357 revolver, which I'd either have 38 or 357 in it. And for me, that was enough. I did, over the past 10 years, switch to Glocks as a carry. And it's once you start using that type of semi-automatic pistol, you're amazed, and you put the optic on it, you're even more amazed because it compensates for your age-related deficiencies. But I would be extremely comfortable, and there are many reasons why I'm considering going back to revolver. For instance, I almost always have a firearm on me, and I'm very comfortable with a revolver on me, that I'm not going to have some funky discharge because of a holster malfunction. I know this is a very sensitive topic, compared if I had a semi-automatic pistol with one in the chamber, and for whatever reason, as I was sitting, something happened. There was lint from my belly button in the holster. Who knows? I don't want to be that guy. But I feel pretty comfortable with a revolver. If I have a revolver as my backup firearm, and I have a long gun like a multi-barrel shotgun as a homeowner, um, I'm not expecting a zombie apocalypse. I'm not expecting a horde, a contingent of people. I'm expecting to deal with four-legged threats and two-legged threats in defense of my life, and I don't want to shoot anything I don't have to.
Yeah.
So I'm not. I understand you guys have AR platforms, and you in the military law enforcement have thousands of hours on them, and I think I fully support everyone's right to own them. But I don't have thousands of hours on them. I have to use the platforms that I know.
Well, you bring that up, Bill. The simple thing is, if you're in uniform and you're working a police car in the middle of the night and you're out at Fruitville and 75, you make a car stop at 2 a.m., you walk up on that driver's door, you don't know what's in there. And every cop faces that with every traffic stop he's on. So their ability to be able to get the gun out and start running rounds when they see a threat is a job requirement. For us, whether you're a retired baker, broker, or cop, if you're walking downtown on Main Street and you see a homeless guy off his meds or something like that, and he's acting erratically, well, you see that he's abnormal and there's something different going on there. Well, you're not going to keep walking in that same direction. You're going to go in a different path to
If we all lies.
avoid that fight if you can. And so after I retired, you kind of switch gears, and yeah, it's great to have 17 rounds with you. I mean, that's dynamite. But depending on the time of year down here in Florida, maybe your shirt isn't going to conceal that, and you don't want to look like you've got some tumor sticking out from your stomach. So you're carrying a 5-shot J frame or an LCR or maybe a airweight K frame, something like that, that you can conceal. You have the reliability, but you're also paying attention to the surroundings. So hopefully you're not going to be surprised and you can avoid that fight before it comes. I always went by the mindset after I started learning this stuff when I was much younger, is not every situation in life is survivable.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to accept the fact that there are certain things that are not survivable. So you enjoy the survivable ones and you do the best you can. And if you survive it, great. But the necessity to have a couple extra 17-round mags is great if you're in Hollywood and you're filming, an action movie. But in real life, even thinking about all the firearms research that our cops did over the years, I only remember one gunfight where there was actually a reload that took place. It was usually taken care of very quickly and without the need for a reload. That doesn't mean you might not need one, but the emphasis that you have to have one, I think, is greatly enhanced. And for me, if I was carrying the semi, and of course 1911, my favorite, the extra mag is not necessarily because I need the extra rounds, it's because if I have a mag failure in the gun, and I can clear that mag and put a new one in and then keep on running. That's really, for me, the way I look at it.
Before we move on, can we also just emphasize how important it is, if you're going to carry a pistol, that you have some type of holster with a trigger guard at all times?
So definitely, and my whole thing is every pistol gets a holster.
I mean, you're kidding.
Right? And I am perfectly honest with you, I don't use any soft holsters because I don't like the way that they can sometimes dog ear and go into the trigger guard when I'm reholstering, or when one of my students is reholstering, if we're doing a draw from holster class. The other thing I don't like about the leather is here in Florida, I sweat a lot, and the leather holsters hold that moisture, and I feel, well, yeah, they stink. No, they smell like roses with me, but with other people they stink, and I can sweat all day in this holster. I can pull that pistol out, wipe it down real quick. I can put paper towel in that holster and pull it back out, and it's totally dry. And it doesn't collapse down when I go to reholster because it's a Kydex holster. So I'm a big proponent of the Kydex. There are some leather holsters I've used over the years that were reinforced and stuff like that, not to close down. But in general, I do prefer the Kydex holsters. Um, so that way, my trigger guard's always covered. And even if my gun, if I'm using this gun for home defense, and I've got it next to the bed, it's in a level 3 holster. So that way, it's not just falling out. I've got some form of control on that gun.
Now, Billy, I noticed that your firearm there has some accessories besides the holster.
Yeah.
And I may have seen an optic on there. I think I see an optic.
Yep.
But there's a light on it.
Yep.
Now, some people consider these accessories tactical, but the optic for me, as my eyes have gotten older, it is a convenience. And I do find that the light, I'm on a rural property, can come in handy if I have no other light. I almost always have a light. And it does help with muzzle rise a little bit. I would also like to point out that some of the newer revolvers are coming from the factory, optic ready, and they've got a rail to put a light on them, which is nice.
They are starting to. And I feel that, listen, I teach a lot of people, and I teach from 10 years old to 86 is my oldest student right now. I'm finding more and more people that are 45 and above are needing to use a holographic sight because they cannot see the iron sights. They cannot see them. Stigmatisms are really big. I've got a lot of clients here lately that have had stigmatisms. They have a lot of trouble iron sight shooting, and holographic sights are an amazing advent and an amazing tool for them to use to be able to get on target.
Can I ask a serious question?
Yes.
You know, in the old days, they've got like screens for this now. It's more modern. But in the old days, when you go to the optometrist, they had an eye chart, can you see this letter and all that stuff? And if we have somebody whose vision is not great, why would we ever, because they're not Jedis, why would we ever have them practice any type of shooting beyond the range that they can do the eye chart? If you can only see to 10 feet, you should only practice shooting to 10 feet. If you can't see out to 15, don't practice shooting at 15, only to know that as far as you can't see. It's like hunting. You don't take a shot if you don't have a clean shot.
Yes, I don't tell anybody to ever shoot at anything that they can't identify.
I think it's a common problem now.
And
people are shooting beyond their vision.
Yeah. I think people also will shoot. Listen, one of my biggest problems when I was out at Manatee was the 1,000-yard range was on that main line. And I would hear in my powered ears, hey man, watch this. And some dude with a little stubby revolver would shoot at the steel out at 1,000 yards.
Right.
So I mean, yes, I mean that was.
I only did it once.
That was one of my problems when we still had the 1,000 opened on the main line at Manatee when I was running it, was that if people could see it, they'll shoot at it, and they'll shoot at it with a platform that is not meant to shoot at that at 1,000 yards.
Yep.
And listen, I would throw them out of there for that too. In the same the same aspect. You can't just take shots at anything you want to out there. But people will try to do things that they got no business trying to do.
By the way, and I just want to point this out, January 2nd, we had a no burn notice. Everybody in my neighborhood was still lighting fireworks.
Still lighting fireworks like crazy.
I heard gunfire as well. I mean, I'm sure they're shooting in the air like them. Doesn't matter if they shoot in the berm, but what comes up must come down, that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you bring up that point about, shooting at things you can't see, and it has a lot to do with home defense.
Yeah.
When you don't have to wait too long because another event will come up where some homeowner with a gun, probably with minimal training, shot a family member that was coming in late. They didn't pay attention. They were shooting at a shadow. They were shooting at a noise. They were shooting at maybe a voice they couldn't identify. And that really goes along with the training that we are big proponents of. Is to never shoot at anything in self-defense that you can't clearly identify as a threat. You have your gun. And one of the things that works really good for people is you get the guys who come in and they buy a gun over at Shoot Straight and they go on the range and shoot 50 rounds. They take it home, clean it, and they put it up in the closet and they think they're ready for a gun.
They're ready for the zombie apocalypse.
What I saw over the years with the cops, I remember one cop in particular, he got into a gunfight at a strip mall. And he had rounds going all over the place. And the guy was only in one direction, but there were shots at 90 degrees away from this guy. And then to listen to him on the radio, you could tell he absolutely had no control over his situation. But then other guys, they would get into a shooting and they'd get on the radio. And our kind of code that we had developed was you ask for a supervisor, a code 3 backup, and a code 3 ambulance, meaning light and siren. And you didn't say anything else. You didn't shout shots fired, suspect down, all the Hollywood crap. You didn't do that. You kept it very, very clean and concise. And those guys were the ones who they shot a lot. They had confidence in their gun. Yeah, they had confidence in their gun handle.
They had ability.
And that was really the big thing. And I heard it because of the team that I was on when I worked there. They weren't really allowed to talk to me during the investigation of the shooting, but there was informal conversations that took place in the locker room afterwards. And they would ask me, hey, GB, can I talk to you off the record? Yeah, I don't have much of a memory anyway. I'll probably forget it. And they would say, I remember a couple of them in particular, they used to think I was kind of a jerk on the range. There's another word I could use, but we're on camera, so I won't use it. But they would say, we thought you were kind of a jerk on the range because you're always shouting in our ear as we were shooting, front sight press. Well, I was a big believer because we didn't have optics back there in the Stone Age when we had pterodactyls flying overhead.
Grandpa Bueller over here.
You find a front sight, you focus on the front sight, and you press the trigger and make the hit. And on 2 separate occasions, 2 different officers, 2 different gunfights, they came to me afterwards and they said, that's the thing I was thinking about when this happened, is focusing on my front sight and pressing that trigger.
Now, it used to be called, I think, instinctive shooting or point shooting, yeah?
Well,
remember the old Army experience? You had a guy shooting aspirins with an air gun?
No,
it was, who was that guy? I remember, he was pretty good at that. But, an anomaly's kind of like Bob Munden and Jerry Micklick, guys like that, Ed McGivern. But I'd heard the term instinctive shooting, and I kind of don't go along with that for a couple of reasons. I don't know anybody who came out of the birth canal with a 1911 in their hand. And if they did, to me, instinct is I touch something on the stove, it's hot, and I don't even have to think about pulling my finger away. Now, point shooting, you can get really good at point shooting, and if you use a CERT trainer, laser trainer, and you practice, and you're from here to that wall there, you can go from the hip and you can hit that light switch 9 times out of 10 if you're doing it every day, 3 times a day. But that skill is very perishable. And so we went away from, because when I came into law enforcement in the late 70s, point shooting was something that was still phasing out, but it really, it was emphasized much more at gun sight that you have to use the sights to make the hit. And a point hit, if we had a CERT trainer in here, we'd be able to demonstrate it on camera. From a retention position at, say, 7 yards, if you move that gun muzzle 3/4 of an inch, you're going to miss the target entirely. Now, does that mean that you can't do a Tom Cruise collateral alley mugging scene where you speed rock and a distraction strike and you blast the first guy, you back up and use your sights and gun the other guy down? And no, that was a very well done scene in a movie. Michael Mann, of course, who made that look very realistic. But in real life, if you're not at touching distance, I believe you need to get the sight up there to be able to make the hit.
I know this is controversial. Forgive me for asking.
Please ask. And you're forgiven before you ask.
Thank you. Both eyes open or one eye shut?
It's kind of like what shoe do you wear? It's all independent. Now, I'm right eye dominant, but I still got to scrunch down my left eye a little bit to make sure I stay on the right eye. When it comes to the optic, both eyes open, put the dot on there, make the strike. And that's good. And I love the optics. I do.
We are bringing John along.
I resisted them for a long time because they are a gadget and they got a battery and everything like that. But I hanging out with Tank, things rub off. The lavender smell of his sweaty holster rubs off, and my car interior smells good the rest of the day. Yeah. But the optics I have to teach them, so I have to know them. And
they're an advantage.
And you can't deny they're an advantage, especially on a long gun. Now, you were talking earlier about the lights. If you look at any of my guns, I've got 2 that have optics on them, those 2 that I use. I don't hang a light on a handgun for one particular reason. I like having an independent light. Of course, you're going to have a little more trouble navigating the handgun if you're using a Harry's or a syringe technique and a Z light from Surefire. But if you have your gun at a low ready and you are using your light to illuminate, you're not pointing your gun at somebody where you're pointing the light. And I like having a separation on those two with the handgun. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't, if you're trained well enough and you use that light a lot, that you can go to a low ready and you'll get a splash or a halo effect from the beam to be able to identify the target. But if you don't train enough to not point the gun, to point the light at the target, and maybe you're pointing at somebody that's a family member, came home late, liquored up, or something like that. So different options to think about. Not all of them, you know, they're right, they're wrong, you can pick them apart, but just you have to think about what's right for you. And I can't always tell you what's right for you.
With your lights, do you ever use the taser flashlights? Where they serve a dual purpose?
No, I haven't used it. And you know, the tasers, I've used tasers before in law enforcement. I've seen tasers used in law enforcement, and they work spectacularly good against cops.
Yeah.
I mean, they just always work good against cops, but they don't always work good in the
Do you know
real.
why I like them? Because I have four-legged threats, and the sound and the smell.
That's
of them
right,
is
yeah,
a
out
less
here.
lethal option where I don't have to worry about trespass by projectiles.
That's right.
All that applies.
Well, now also too, I carry pepper spray specifically for four-legged.
Right, you don't mind being pepper sprayed.
Because most four-legged animals,
His facial is pepper spray, you know?
most four-legged animals have very sensitive noses. So actually, pepper spray is a very effective way
Sure.
to neutralize.
How long have postal carriers had a can of halt on the side of their mailbag or in their?
I also carry an airborne if I'm worried about four-legged threats.
Yeah.
I don't like shooting animals if I'm going to shoot
No,
them.
no,
Yeah.
no.
won't do it.
I prefer not to, for sure.
Right.
I generally carry a handheld, and I usually have lights on my guns. I want to have a handheld so that way I'm not pointing a gun at somebody that doesn't need a gun pointed at them. And honestly, I'll carry a handheld when I'm going somewhere where I can't take a gun.
Right.
You know, because then at least I have a way to identify something. I can blind something. It's pretty bright, right? And then also, instead of punching things with my hand, I can hit things with the metal,
Bezel strike.
which I would much prefer. And most people that don't know how to punch are much better off using hammer fists with a metal object in their hand than punching.
Now, Billy, I'm going to stick just for a moment, if you'll permit me,
Yeah.
on this four-legged threat idea because we are in Florida.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think you were here the other day when we had to chase the alligator from under the car of my older son.
No.
So
was not.
it's
My
one
God.
thing to have these things, but you know, by my door, and I recommend everybody in the great state of Florida have some sticks and also a game catch pole, so you don't have to get up close and personal or have to draw your firearm when you're dealing with those types of nuisances. We don't always have to go for our firearm.
No.
Yeah,
no.
and good point.
But it's good to
love
have one
gators.
there.
I wouldn't want to shoot a gator. I like them, you know. But, you know, Billy brings up a good point. This is one of the things that I enjoy so much about teaching and training with him is we don't agree on everything. We present different options to our students. And every time he holsters a striker fired gun into an appendix holster, I just cringe.
Thanks, John.
I shake inside.
Appendix carry a
It
striker
just
pistol?
scares the dog crap out of me. And you do that every time. I never reholster into appendix position. I take the holster off, gun goes in, and then I reinsert the
I
whole
don't carry
package.
one in the chamber with a striker pistol appendix.
So you Israeli it when you come out?
Well, I like to keep my firearm not pointing at any part of me, no matter what body position I am in.
Okay.
That's a priority for me.
Yes.
And I can't always guarantee that with an appendix carry while I'm
He
doing
doesn't
stuff.
generally carry appendix.
Yeah.
He's generally carrying 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock.
I carry appendix with the revolver, like we talked about earlier, because you have some inherent safeties with the revolver.
No, I lie. I have fanny packed a revolver many times, particularly when the fanny pack has an insert for the revolver. So I do lie. And that's technically could be,
Okay.
Yeah.
but I lie sometimes, John. There's exceptions.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll take it. We won't put you on the poly.
All right, good.
I
Now,
wonder, is anybody that tuned into this channel, are they still awake? Are they still watching?
Yeah.
Both people that have turned into this, are they still watching?
yeah. Do you guys want to talk specifically about the revolvers versus semi-autos?
Sure.
Yeah, let's.
Do you want to take a minute first?
I'll go.
I came ready.
Yeah. I like carrying revolvers. I grew up with revolvers. I'm comfortable with revolvers. I like revolvers because you can quickly change the ammunition for niche ammunition like snake shot or something if you wanted to. They just work. They're reliable. Not they don't always work. They're not magic, but I mean, I'm never uncomfortable with having my revolver loaded in a holster, and I feel like if I grab it, it'll work if I do.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I've had revolvers since 1976 is when I got my first revolver. My hair was dark back then, which obviously wasn't yesterday. And of all the Smith& Wesson's Smith & Wesson revolvers that have come into and out of my possession over the years in ownership, I've had one that broke an internal spring. It was showing clear.
Clear?
Good to go there.
Yes, sir.
There's a spring that's inside the frame here that powers up this little lug that comes up and it locks the cylinder during rotation for firing. And that it's a coil spring. It's a coil spring that's maybe about eighth of an inch long, and it broke midway on one of the coils and collapsed on itself, and the gun would lock up. Well, big deal. Take the stocks off, take the screws out of the side plate, hit the bottom of the frame with a hammer repeatedly. The side plate will walk up, you don't pry it off. And I pulled that off and I saw that spring was in there, it was broken, big deal. Pair of tweezers, pull that puppy out, go to my parts box, take another one, put it back in, everything goes back together, and the gun's working again. Of all the revolvers I've had, that's the only malfunction, the only thing that ever broke on one of those over the years. As far as I'm concerned, they're about as reliable as a man-made device can be. And that's one of the reasons that I like them.
Now, this little LCR is eminently concealable. If you want something a little heavier, I like Rugers, obviously. This is a Ruger SP101. You can get the GP100 if you want for the extra round, and they both come in longer barrels. And if you're worried about bear or a bull gator, I guess, this is the Smith & Wesson 500. And if that can't do it, it probably can't be done.
Yeah, that's exactly.
You're going to hurt your wrist after a while if you're not.
And when you go to the larger rounds. So, I understand that that's the number one thing people say about revolvers is they're reliable. In the same tone with that, I've got my Glock 34 here. I've got my Smith & Wesson 2.0. I've probably got about 50,000 rounds through this pistol. I probably got about 30 through that one. And I don't have problems a lot. Like
They do. Because you work.
I mean, yes,
You
well,
work them
because I'm
correctly.
doing the proper things.
You're
I'm
holding
doing
them
the
correctly,
proper
all that.
grip, and but they're very reliable guns. The Glocks, the Smith & Wesson 2.0s, the SIG 365s. I've only got one 320, but I have 5 365s, and they all get worn and shot regularly.
You know what I don't like? This is going to sound very strange. You know I'm pro Second Amendment, and I may
Yeah.
get tarred and feathered off the podcast now. But just to speak of headology, the one thing I do worry about with some firearm enthusiasts that are more enthusiastic than practiced is when they have that magazine with their 17 rounds, or on a long gun, they have the magazine with 28 rounds or 30 rounds or whatever it is. Are they less careful with the rounds because of that? Are they thinking accuracy by volume? These non-practice shooters, I prefer them to have less rounds than for them to be more careful with them. Not because I'm against a larger capacity magazine, to be clear, but I know if I have less rounds, I have to be more careful with them. I'm not going to spray and pray.
Yes.
A single shot shotgun is a thing. It provides a value.
No, I understand what you're saying that, but everybody who's shooting for self-defense needs to understand that they are responsible for every round that leaves that gun. And honestly, the only rounds you should be letting go are rounds that you've identified on a clear target, and you've sighted that gun in on that target, and then you've done everything you needed to do to break that shot onto that target.
And also, when we talk about if we like to shoot, if we have love of shooting, my favorite all-time firearm to shoot is my Henry Lever rifle in 22. And who in here ever shot the 22 long rifle cricket? Remember that bolt action cricket?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the little
What a fun
pull it
little
in the
gun.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
single shot bolt
Yeah.
action, yeah.
And who was a child, if you had a friend that had a Ruger, and it's the one time we'll say the banana clip, the magazine, the Ruger, and you saw him make the can dance, either with that Ruger or that Lever rifle or the revolver, and that just made you love being there.
Yeah.
22s, they're just a lot of fun.
No, 22s are a lot of fun, whether they're in revolvers or semi-autos or rifles or whatever.
Cheap
They're very
ammunition as
fun.
well.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the
Oh,
one
for
thing with a
sure.
revolver is you have to work on two things, and you have to work on them extensively, and that's learning how to reload the gun. because they only hold 5 or 6, or like I got an L frame that holds
8.
7 rounds.
Yeah, some are
The
7
N
or
frame
8.
three, I don't know, the
357.
327 I think it is, holds 8. And so you have to learn how to reload, either with a speed loader, or if you're running a gun, showing clear,
Yep.
Yes, sir.
with moon clips. So you have the rounds in the moon clip, you just drop them in there, and
Takes a
you're
bit of
good.
practice, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit, but they just go in, especially in
Yeah.
45. They
It's
just drop
much-
in there, and they're pretty good.
Moon clips are the way
So
to
they,
go.
they work out pretty good, but the thing about moon clips is they can become bent, and then you have maybe problems getting them in. The other thing with the revolver is the trigger pull. When it comes to the trigger pull, it's long, and it's, requires 12 or 13 pounds, but you're doing so many things at the same time. You're rotating the cylinder, you're cocking the hammer, and then you get to the point where the cylinder locks. You might have been able to hear it there. I could, even with my ears at this age. And then after it locks, then there's just a little bit more of a pull before it goes. So if you can learn to stage that trigger and stop your trigger pull when that cylinder stops, and then confirm your sight alignment, you can shoot very accurately with this, even in double action, because you're just pulling off just a little bit more until the gun goes.
So this is something that I teach, and it doesn't matter whether you're running a revolver or semi-auto. You have to know the trigger. You have to know where that trigger breaks. You have to be able to take all the slack out and prep that trigger.
Right.
Now, is it harder on a revolver that's double action? It's a little harder. It's going to take more time.
It's different.
It's different.
It's your Jeep versus my daughter's Kia. It's just different.
Yeah.
And so you can learn to run the revolver really good. All you can do is watch a couple of videos of Jerry Micklick and what he can do with a revolver. But and I get people every once in a while, they'll say, well, I heard that really harms the revolver when you dry fire it. Well, this thing was made here back in, gosh, early 80s, because it's not pinned, doesn't have the recesses. But if I had $1 for every time I had done this with this gun, we wouldn't be doing a video today. We'd be down in the Bahamas, in Bimini at the sports club or something like that. So you can dry fire these things, and you have to dry fire these things. Will they wear out eventually? Well, they can, but you can also get them repaired. Like anything else, if you don't use it, it's not going to wear out. But if you don't use it, you're not going to learn how to use it when you really have to.
Plus, they're fun guns to shoot.
They're very fun to shoot. Now, I've had a few people that, well, I can't pull the trigger on that revolver. Okay, I get that.
Yeah.
But, you can actually build up muscle.
Yeah. That's, and listen, one of the number one things that I talk to when I talk to students of mine that cannot rack the slide or cannot pull the trigger on a double action only revolver, or on a revolver double action first, well, we can build your strength.
Yeah.
And we can get your hands stronger, and we can show you techniques that will help you too.
Also, the Smith & Wesson 500, if you're Catholic, you get very guilty after you buy this gun because of the cost of the ammunition. You tend not to fire it. And also,
only if you're Catholic.
that's
right?
right.
Only if
Yeah.
you're Catholic.
So as a Lutheran, it wouldn't bother you, right?
No, those Lutherans, they'll do anything.
You know what they'll do.
But the other thing is, sometimes we'll bottom fire them, and we're irrational. We're rational creatures. Like there's the Hellcats and the 365s. It's a great idea. I love the pistols. You know why I don't carry them? I'm mad. I'm mad because every time I go to load the magazines, my thumbs complain. I've got bad thumbs. I know they got the loaders, but I get so pissed off, I just put it back down. I say, I don't want to touch it.
Yeah.
I got a solution for you. Go to a 1911. You can load those mags.
Yeah, that's true. 1911, single stack.
It's proven.
You can do it, yeah.
Everybody, I think, should have a 145 ACP pistol.
I totally agree. Whether it's a 45 ACP revolver or a 45 ACP 1911.
But then you need the matching long gun. That's
You
the
do?
problem.
Yeah, you do.
So we've got our revolvers, we've got our semi-autos. One of the things that I do like about revolvers, and one of the reasons why I like to use revolvers, is for the larger caliber pistols, for stuff to stop like bear and stuff like that. Although I have,
You should just get that 10 millimeter or something.
I set one of my students up a while back with a 10 mil, and I really learned to respect the 10 millimeter cartridge much more than what I had before.
I know we're talking about semi-automatics and revolvers, but 45 ACP versus a 10 mil. What do you take?
Oh, 10 mils way better than 45 ACP.
Look at him. He's sad. You're making him sad about this. John, what do you think?
I can't dispute the 10. I'm just a 45 ACP guy. I reload that caliber. I like that caliber. I get a 45 ACP on a turret press. It feels good, but when you're trying to load 5.56 or 38 on a turret press, your fingers feel like they're bananas. And my hands aren't that big, but those are small cartridges, 10 millimeter, a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
The 10 is impressive. I will not dispute that. Probably the closest I'll get to 10 is my 38 Super.
Well, and I'll tell you, a lot of people don't realize how hot you can really load 10
Oh
mil
my
too.
gosh, it's smoking.
Any difference in price, availability, ballistics, subsonic capability between those two rounds?
I mean, both of them, well, 45 ACP is generally loaded to subsonic. 10 mil can be loaded to subsonic. You just can go a lot hotter with a 10 mil. You know, there's a factory ammunition that I find that's upwards of 740 foot-pounds of energy. With a 45, you're looking 450, 500. I mean, 5 to 7, I mean, it's 250 foot-pounds of energy difference.
So either for black bear country, but for brown bear, you might go to 10 mil.
With brown bear, I definitely go to 10 mil.
I don't go to any of these bear countries.
And honestly, I would not use 45 for brown bear. I wouldn't carry 45 in
You might
brown
need
bear.
revision.
Yeah, well, and I've thought about this too.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll be perfectly honest with you. I've thought about if I run into a bull gator out in kayaking and stuff like that, I would feel much better about having a 10 mil than a 9 mil every day and twice on Sunday. I mean,
So we were out kayaking one day. We brought some kids out kayaking, Billy and I, and it was right on the cusp of gator mating season. And there was a large bull gator in the weeds. We didn't know it, but he growled. He did that thing. It's right out of the Tarzan cartoon. And Billy steps in between the kids and the gator, being Billy, and he puts his hand, and he goes, "Are we going to do this?" to the gator, and the gator backed off. I never saw the like of it.
Well, you heard of them.
I guess.
You knew of them, yeah. That was,
like,
I didn't expect that day.
well,
And he actually said, "Are we going to do this?" I guess the gator spoke English and decided he wasn't going to do it.
I mean, it's
can't
one of those
dispute the
things.
story.
No, I was
You
there.
can't dispute the story.
It was pretty funny.
I don't know. Like well, you know what that comes from? That comes from the Marine Corps, honestly.
Yeah.
Because anytime I feel like anything's close to me, it's ambush close. It's turn and go through it as hard as you possibly can. With every bit of your of ounce of courage and energy and strength that you have to turn and you have to go into that ambush. You have to go into that. So I kind of turned towards that object and I was like, are we going to do this or not? If we're going to do this, let's do this. If not, shut up and be about your business. So
That was basically the conversation he had.
that's kind of how I feel about it. So.
Well, real quick, just to wrap up the cartridge controversy, the one thing about the 45 that's so enjoyable is it's an easy caliber to shoot.
It
And it
is.
doesn't beat the crap out of you. Like my daughter, you've seen my daughter,
Yes.
she's 5 foot, weighs 115 or whatever, Jiu-Jitsu chick, does all that stuff. But she can shoot a 45 all day without any problem. And I've told people about that and they, what? And I said, well, but it's got a different recoil impulse when you
Yes.
shoot it. Versus like if you shoot a 44 Magnum with 240 grain full load cartridges, yeah, you can shoot them. And I love that caliber and I love those guns, but I don't like shooting them at full caliber. My reloads for 44 Magnum, they might go 25 yards and they might go all the way through a cardboard target, definitely through a paper target, but that's it. I like that,
Just enough.
just enough so you can
Just
enjoy
enough.
shooting it and everything like that. But what did they say that Hiroshima? It wasn't the bomb that destroyed it. It was the pilot in the B-29 that fired one round out of a 1911 out of the cockpit, and that's what destroyed the city. I don't know if that's true or not. I just
It was Chuck Norris.
Yeah, Chuck Norris was flying it.
Yep.
Yeah, but there was a guy. There was I think his name was Bagby.
Pilot.
He was his plane was shot out from under him in the South Pacific, and he's floating down in the parachute. He knew that
45.
the Jap Zero pilots had a tendency
Come around and finish you off.
shoot the airmen that are floating down. So he was hanging there acting dead when this Japanese Zero pilot came up almost to a stall with the canopy open. It was written about in an article in Air Force magazine several years ago. And as it got close enough to him, he came up with a 1911 and he capped the guy in the head.
Wow.
Plane augered down. He floated down, got captured and everything like that. I think the story ended up he got taken to a POW camp, and the commandant of the camp couldn't help but being impressed by him, but he also gave him the opportunity to do, the
Typical.
honorable thing, which he refused. But anyway, documented thing where it did bring a plane down with a 45 auto, and I don't know if that's ever been done with a 10 millimeter. So that
Oh,
over here.
well, I'll tell you, 10 mil's not done. Run 2 world wars. I mean,
There you go.
geez, listen, don't get me wrong. I do love the 45, but if I'm carrying something for larger game, it's going to be 10 mil.
I would go with this.
Yeah. I love 45. I do. That's, what I kind of grew up shooting a lot. And I got a chance to shoot a lot of 1911 and 45, and I love that cartridge and I love those guns. But depending on what I'm doing, I may use something else. And I am probably going to be going to a 2011 here as my back heals and I'm able to get back into competition. I want to go to a 2011. I'm gonna.
At my age, because I'm the oldest guy in this room, which is most.
You are very old, John.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But at my age, there's a couple of things I learned. You never insult a guy's wife, the choice of his cars, or the choice of his guns. And if you go by those 3 rules, you'll probably have.
You'll probably be all right. No,
You violate those rules.
no fights.
Yeah, and you're going to have some problems. So, the wisdom that they get on this channel.
So revolvers are a great option. Some people like them for their simplicity. Some people like them because of some of the cartridges you can use. Revolvers are a great option. Semi-autos are an option, and there are some semi-autos that you get that have larger cartridges, like a 10 millimeter Glock or a Smith & Wesson or whatnot. But they are all options nonetheless. Just like we have options for long guns for different things that we're doing. And some revolvers will fit in better in one use, and then some revolvers will fit better in another use, just like some of the semi-autos. I'm probably not going to carry this gun in this holster if I'm trying to carry concealed, right?
Exactly.
I'm going to use a different gun in a different holster. This is more for outside the waistband. So, just picking the right equipment for the right job that you're doing. And I think that there's definitely a lot of spillover from the semi-autos to the revolvers. I do prefer the semi-autos, one, because I do prefer to have more ammunition on myself. That is a training scar, I think. I could almost call it a training scar from being with the military and from having 8 mags of 5.56 on me and another 180 round, on stripper clips on my butt pack, and then having ammo cans in our vehicles where if we get ambushed, we grab those ammo cans and go to a safe spot and then defend that spot the best that we can. So I am a little, I'm an amosexual, I guess, a little bit. I like to have a lot more ammunition around per se.
Yeah.
Because of just experiences that I've had. I generally carry 2 mags, one in my pistol and one spare mag when I'm carrying concealed on a daily basis. I generally always have 2 mags on me.
Billy, very soon I will transition from semi-automatic pistol as my regular carry back to revolvers because I'm getting older. My eyes aren't getting better. My hands aren't getting better. And it's a simpler platform.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've run into with some of the students that we have is when I bring up the subject of revolvers, well, they don't have safety. Well, they don't have a manual
They don't have a manual
like that on
safety,
1911,
yes.
but they do have some safety things that are definitely good to think about showing clear again,
Yes,
which
sir.
we do every time we let the gun go out of our hand. If you're probably not going to catch it on here, but when you look at the recoil shield with the cylinder open, the firing pin is not protruding through the hole where it comes through. Now, if you pull the trigger, you can see the firing pin has come through the hole there. But when you release the hammer rebounds and the pin
Goes back on.
retracts. And there's also a block internally here that comes up between the hammer and the frame. So even if this is fully loaded with 6 rounds and you dropped it from a 2-story building on the hammer, the chances of it going off are as close to 0 as mechanically possible. And that's one of the reasons why I don't have a problem with running a revolver in the appendix position, because even when I bend my leg and now it's pointing at that crease there between your pelvis and your leg, I'm as confident as I can be that the gun is not going to go off and cause a problem. So when it comes to manual safeties, no, it doesn't have those, but neither does the Glock. And so if you are hung up on that, well, you could get an M&P with a thumb safety option.
2011.
Or a 1911, but then of course you got to
2011.
carry it cocked and locked, which freaks out a lot of people.
Yeah.
We carried them for years on the police department out in California. I liked them, and then somebody did something ridiculous one time, and then we had to transition to SIGs.
Everybody got theirs taken away.
Yeah. The first
One cautionary tale for the people that aren't shooters that are watching this video. The one dangerous part about the revolver is, and clear,
Yes, sir.
is this.
Well, the gap between
Yeah.
the
Gap,
edge of the barrel
And
and
I'm
the
amazed
cylinder. Yeah.
by people that don't know this.
Yes.
It'll blow your damn finger off.
Yes, and there's actually video of someone shooting. I think it's a 44 mag with a hot dog against that, and it rips the hot dog.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
yeah, yeah. And so that's
I gotta
yes.
look that up.
So
That's
with
fantastic.
the revolvers, right? And we got that.
Okay, good.
I am not going to place my thumb forward here like this. That is my semi-auto grip. When I go to revolver, I go to more of this grip.
Yeah.
And then I can manipulate the hammer with that thumb if I need to, whether I want to let it go forward or whether I'm pulling it back into single action, but I do not have my thumb up there. And that's one thing, like, I find that people, they mess up a lot is if they go from revolver to semi-auto, because if I put my hand here like this on a semi-auto, now the problem is the slide is going to bite me. So, we cannot
I did that when I switched to Glocks. I do that all the time.
we cannot put that hand back there because now that slide is going to come back and bite me. I want that thumbs forward grip. Yeah, well, yeah. But I want that thumbs forward grip. So if you're switching back and forth from revolver to semi-auto, you need to really be aware of that, especially if you're running something bigger or Magnum, because you put that thumb up there on the side of that cylinder and you can cause very serious damage, especially with something like that 500 or a 44 mag or a 357 Magnum. It can tear that thumb to bits.
Yeah.
So
Likewise, you see people do stupid things where they're shooting the way they're not supposed to. It'll blow anything off. It's on your thigh, it'll blow that off. It's on your clothes, it's going to put a hole in that. Be careful.
Yeah.
Well, and another thing with the revolvers that people need to realize when it comes to those is we just call it revolver etiquette for us old guys, is we don't flip the cylinder open. Because when you have a full cylinder of cartridges in there and you flip it open and it stops hard, you can slightly bend that. And these are, when they're locked up and they're closed, they're pretty durable.
Solid.
But when they're open, they're a precision instrument, and we don't ever flip the cylinder back closed like you're in some 1930s detective show or something like that. We close it and run it up till it locks, and then we're good to go.
Well,
But these have to be used the right way so that you can run the gun, and you have to learn it the right way.
and this is what I was taught.
Yeah.
Or
Fingers
my
through
combat
there.
reload
Yeah.
is those 2 fingers through there. I put my,
So you go in,
right in,
dump out, go back
Close
into
that.
your next load.
bing, bing,
and
bing.
That's all you
Work
just,
of beauty.
just go back in
Did
there.
you get that? That's
And
good.
back out, and then when you go for your reload, but you gotta hold the cylinder open all the way or they won't go back in, and you're pretty much good to go with it.
John, if you do that in front of women, I think they're going to come on to you. That was amazing to watch.
Must be the secret of my lack of success with women. I've never shown a woman that before.
Yeah.
So anyway,
You should start with that
Yeah,
from now
I
on.
guess so, yeah.
That was
Maybe
very
it'll
elegant.
help.
Head down to the Gator Club, put that on the bar.
And I know that sounds particular, but when you see something like that that's elegantly done, that's usually the tip of an iceberg to where there's a lot of habits of excellence. So I'm just impressed by that kind of thing.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, no, I like the wheel guns, but I like my 1911s too,
Yep.
and I like those M&Ps.
And you like the
know I like
M&Ps.
those M&Ps.
I've turned you onto those MMPs pretty good too, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah. So anything else about the revolvers versus semi-autos that we want to touch on right
That
now?
horse to death.
The only other thing
time.
I'll add is in defense of the 9mm, it is a cheap NATO round, and sometimes that round is less expensive than, say, the 357, even the
Oh, it's
38,
way
44.
cheaper. It's
more
one of the
available
cheapest.
Yeah.
Yeah. 9mm is prolific right now.
Yeah.
And it's in, I'm finding it like 23 cents a round. I'm getting it about 23 cents a round, which is not bad.
It's affordable.
It's not really bad.
For those who are thinking about getting into shooting, if you shoot, the cost of ammunition quickly outstrips the cost of the firearm.
Now, with that, I generally like to have a platform rifle and a platform pistol that I can shoot in 22, and I have SIGs and Glocks and Smith and Wessons in 22. And then any of my AR platforms in 5.56, I can convert to 22. And I have 3 designated AR rifles in 22, so that way I can shoot those and practice everything. And one of the other things that I just bought the other day was the Daniels Defense PCC and 9mm. It's an AR platform set up. And
one I built for my daughter for Christmas.
yes, and it's that way I can run my AR platform controls, and I can still use 9mm, and that's a better house option if you're, you know,
On a quarter-acre lot.
yeah, if you're in a small lot, you got neighbors right next to you and stuff like that. I find that the 9mm for me is a better platform for inside the house than 5.56.
Also, Billy and I, John and Billy disagree from time to time. We all disagree with each other from time to time. I think in defense of the semi-automatic, and Billy would agree, and John would, I think that the ability to put a suppressor on there, or as it's sometimes called a silencer, anything that will dampen the noise. I'm 80% deaf in my left. Raise your hand if you've got some hearing impairment. You know, John doesn't want to admit it.
Huh? What
Yeah,
did you
exactly.
say? Raise your hand.
Okay.
Bueller.
Thank you.
Now Billy is a fan, maybe in some home defense situation, of the thunder effect of the firearm. But I'm not in love with that because, you know, I'm affected by that thunder effect too.
Well, let's take a minute and then we'll come back and talk about that.